Marcus Lennon knew he was making a terrible decision even as he walked into the hiring hall on that cold autumn morning. But desperation had a way of drowning out common sense. The frontier settlement of Ashford Ridge was barely more than a collection of wooden buildings huddled together against the wilderness, and the hiring hall was just a drafty barn where laborers gathered hoping for work. Marcus had bought the old Hendricks farm with the last of his military pension, a piece of land so neglected and overgrown that no one else would touch it. The house was falling apart, the fences were rotted through, and the fields had gone to seed for 3 years running. He needed help, and he needed it cheap. The human workers wanted wages he could not afford. They took one look at his ragged clothes and empty purse and turned away. Marcus was about to give up when he noticed her standing in the corner, separate from the others. She was an orc woman, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark green skin that seemed to absorb the dim light filtering through the barn's gaps. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and 2 small tusks curved up from her lower jaw. She wore simple work clothes, patched and worn but clean, and she held herself with a stillness that suggested either patience or resignation. The other workers pointedly ignored her. Marcus had seen that before in his years as a soldier. Orcs were tolerated in frontier settlements only because they were useful, strong backs for hard labor that humans did not want to do. They were paid half of what a human worker earned and given none of the respect. He should have walked away. Hiring an orc would make him even more of an outcast than he already was, a failed farmer who could not afford proper help. But his fields would not plant themselves, and winter was coming fast. He approached her carefully, and she looked up at him with eyes that were a startling amber color, bright against her green skin. "I have a farm that needs work," he said quietly, aware of the eyes on his back. "I cannot pay much, but I can offer room and board and a share of whatever we harvest." "It would be hard work. The place has been abandoned for years." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once. "I can work hard," she said. Her voice was deeper than he expected, with a slight roughness to it. "I am called Grenna." "Marcus," he replied and stuck out his hand. She looked at it with surprise, then gripped it firmly. Her hand was calloused and strong, the hand of someone who had known labor all her life. "We should go now if you are ready. It is a few hours' walk." They left the hiring hall together, and Marcus pretended not to notice the stares and whispers that followed them. Ashford Ridge was not a friendly place for those who broke the unspoken rules, and taking an orc into his home was definitely breaking the rules. But he had learned in the war that survival mattered more than propriety, and right now he needed to survive until spring. The walk to his farm was mostly silent. Grenna walked with an easy stride, carrying a small pack that seemed to contain everything she owned. Marcus tried a few times to make conversation, but her answers were brief and careful, so he eventually gave up and let the silence stretch between them. The road wound through forest that was already showing the colors of autumn, gold and red leaves drifting down to carpet the muddy track. They passed 2 other farms, and Marcus saw the curtains twitch as people watched them go by. When they finally reached his property, Marcus saw it through her eyes and felt a flush of shame. The house was a sagging structure with a roof that clearly leaked in a dozen places. The barn was in even worse shape, missing boards and listing to one side. The fields were a tangle of weeds and brush, the fences broken and scattered. It looked like exactly what it was, a place where hope went to die, but Grenna just surveyed it all with those amber eyes and nodded. "We will need to start with the roof," she said practically, "before the snow comes, and the barn needs shoring up if we want to keep animals. The fields can wait until spring." Her calm assessment made him feel marginally better, At least she was not running away. "There is a well behind the house that still works," he said. "And I have some supplies inside. Not much, but enough to get us through a few days. I will go into town for more once we have a plan." She followed him into the house, ducking slightly under the doorframe. Inside was not much better than outside. Marcus had managed to make one room barely livable, with a fireplace that worked and enough furniture to survive. The rest of the house was a disaster of broken furniture and water damage. He saw her take it all in and waited for her to tell him this was impossible, that she was leaving. Instead, she set down her pack and said, "I will take whatever room you are not using. I do not need much space." "The room at the back is most intact," Marcus said, gesturing down the short hallway. "It has a door that closes and a window that only leaks a little. I have been sleeping out here by the fire, but you should have the room." "You own this farm," Grenna said. "You should have the better room." "Please," Marcus insisted, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "I am used to sleeping rough. I was a soldier for 10 years. A room feels wrong anyway." Something shifted in her expression, a slight softening around her eyes. "Then I accept. Thank you." They spent the rest of that first day taking inventory of what needed to be done. The list was staggering. The roof needed patching in at least 15 places. The barn required new support beams and half the siding replaced. The well needed a new bucket and rope. The fences around what had been the main fields needed to be completely rebuilt. The fireplace needed cleaning before it burned the house down. The windows needed sealing against the coming cold, and that was just the beginning. That night, Marcus cooked a simple meal of porridge and salt pork over the fire. Grenna sat across from him, eating in silence. The firelight played across her features, highlighting the strong line of her jaw and the way her tusks caught the light. He realized he knew nothing about her, where she came from or how she ended up in a hiring hall in a frontier settlement. "If you do not mind me asking," he said carefully, "how did you come to Ashford Ridge?" She looked up from her bowl, considering whether to answer. "I came north from the Valley Territories," she finally said. "There was no more work there, so I moved on. I have been working farms and lumber camps for the past 2 years." "You are far from the orc lands," Marcus observed. He knew that most orcs lived in clan territories to the south and east, land that humans rarely entered. "Yes," she said, and her tone made it clear that was all she would say on that subject. Marcus did not push. He had his own questions he did not want to answer, about why a former soldier with 10 years of service had ended up trying to farm a piece of worthless land instead of taking an easier posting. They both had their secrets, and that was fine. They did not need to be friends. They just needed to survive. The first week was brutally hard. Marcus had thought he was prepared for farm work, but he had forgotten how different it was from soldiering. His back ached from hauling timber. His hands blistered from working the saw. Every night he collapsed by the fire, so exhausted he could barely eat before falling asleep. And through it all, Grenna worked beside him, never complaining, never slowing down. She was stronger than he was, able to lift beams that would have taken 2 men, but she never made him feel inadequate about it. She just did the work that needed doing and moved on to the next task. They developed a rhythm. Up before dawn to make the most of the daylight. Quick breakfast of porridge or bread. Work until midday, then a short break for food and water. Work until dark, then a simple evening meal. Clean up, plan the next day, sleep. It was repetitive and exhausting and somehow comforting in its structure. Marcus had not felt this focused since his military days. What surprised him was how easy it was to work with Grenna. She did not chatter or waste time. She saw what needed doing and did it. When they had to lift something heavy or maneuver a beam into place, she seemed to know instinctively what he was thinking, moving in sync with him. She had good ideas, too, practical solutions to problems he had been struggling with. When they were trying to shore up the barn, she suggested using the fallen trees from the edge of the property, which saved them money and cleared land at the same time. When the chimney was not drawing properly, she figured out that birds had nested in it and showed him how to clear it safely. By the end of the second week, they had the worst of the roof patched and the barn stabilized. It was not pretty, but it would hold through the winter. Marcus went into town for supplies, and the shopkeeper gave him cold looks and charged him extra, making pointed comments about people who consorted with greenskins. Marcus paid without argument and left as quickly as possible, his stomach churning with anger and shame. When he got back to the farm, Grenna was working on repairing the chicken coop, which had been on their list of less urgent tasks. She had found old wire in the barn and was using it to reinforce the walls. "I thought if we could get some chickens before winter, we would have eggs through the cold months," she explained. "They are not expensive, and they mostly feed themselves if we let them range during the day." It was a good idea, one that he should have thought of himself. "The town has a market in 3 days," Marcus said. "We could go together and get chickens and maybe some other stock if we can afford it." Grenna shook her head. "You should go alone. You will get better prices." "Because I am human," Marcus said flatly. "Yes." He wanted to argue to say it did not matter, but they both knew it did. "Fine," he said, "but this is your farm too now. You should have a say in what we buy." She looked at him with those amber eyes, surprise evident on her face. "I am hired help. This is your land." "You work this land as hard as I do," Marcus said. "Harder, maybe. That makes it yours too, at least while you are here." Something shifted between them in that moment, a subtle change in the way she held herself around him. She nodded slowly. "Then I think we need chickens, a goat for milk, and seeds for winter vegetables if we can afford them. There is space near the house that gets good sun even in winter. I could build cold frames." They spent the evening planning their purchases, and for the first time, Marcus felt something like hope. Maybe this impossible venture could actually work. Maybe he had not thrown away his last chance after all. The market day was cold and rainy, and Marcus returned with a dozen chickens, a pregnant goat, and packets of seeds that the seller swore would grow through winter with proper care. He also brought back news that made his stomach sink. A group of men from the settlement had been talking in the tavern about the orc woman living on the Hendricks place, wondering what exactly Marcus was doing with her out there all alone. The implications had been ugly, and Marcus had learned that trouble was coming. He told Grenna about it that evening while they were settling the chickens into their new home. She took the news without expression, as if she had expected it. "I can move on," she said quietly. "You do not need that kind of attention." "No," Marcus said, more forcefully than he intended. "You have as much right to be here as anyone, more right than most, considering how hard you have worked. If they want to make trouble, let them come. I did not survive 10 years of fighting to be scared off by tavern gossip." "This is different than fighting," Grenna said. "In a fight, you know who your enemy is. Here, they will make your life difficult in small ways. They will not sell to you. They will not help when you need it. They will turn everyone against you until you have nothing left." "Then we will make do without them," Marcus said stubbornly. "We have land, we have water, we have each other for labor. We can survive on that." She looked at him for a long moment, and he thought he saw something almost like gratitude in her expression. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you make yourself an outcast for someone you barely know?" Marcus thought about that, trying to put it into words. "In the war, I served with all kinds of people. Humans, dwarves, even a few orcs in the mixed units. The best soldier I ever knew was an orc named Torgen. He saved my life twice, and I never even got to thank him properly because he died in the last battle before the treaty. He was worth 10 of the human soldiers who looked down on him. I learned then that what people are matters more than what they look like. Grenna was very still, and when she spoke, her voice was rough. That is a rare view for a human. Maybe, Marcus said, but it is mine and I am keeping it, so you are staying and anyone who does not like it can go to hell. She surprised him by laughing, a short, sharp sound. Very well. I will stay, but when they come with trouble, do not say I did not warn you. The trouble came faster than Marcus expected. 3 days later, a group of 5 men rode up to the farm in the late afternoon. Marcus recognized them, farmers from the neighboring properties and a couple of men from town. They carried no weapons openly, but their body language was aggressive. Marcus met them in the yard, positioning himself between them and the house where Grenna was working on building the cold frames. "Lennon," said Tom Pritchard, who owned the land to the east. "We need to talk." "So talk," Marcus said evenly. "It is about your hired help," Pritchard said, glancing toward the house. "People are concerned. It is not proper, a human man living alone with an orc woman. People talk." "Let them talk," Marcus said. "Grenna is a farm worker, and she is doing an honest job for honest pay. What anyone else thinks about it is their business, not mine." "It becomes our business when it affects the community," said one of the men from town, a shopkeeper named Dale Winters. "We have standards here. We do not mix with greenskins like that." Marcus felt his temper rising but forced it down. Getting angry would just make things worse. "I am not mixing with anyone. I am running a farm. Grenna works the land, same as any hired hand. If you have a problem with that, you can take it up with the magistrate." "The magistrate agrees with us," Pritchard said. "He thinks you should send her packing, find proper help." "Proper meaning human," Marcus said. "Meaning appropriate," Winters snapped. "She is an orc. They are violent, unpredictable. She could murder you in your sleep." Before Marcus could respond, Grenna's voice came from behind him. "I could," she said calmly, "but then who would fix the roof?" She had come out of the house without him noticing, and she stood now on the porch, her arms crossed. In the fading daylight, her green skin seemed to glow slightly, and Marcus saw the men take an involuntary step back. Orcs were not physically threatening in the way that stories suggested, no more than any strong person, but generations of propaganda had taught humans to fear them. "Stay out of this, Greenskin," Pritchard said, trying to sound authoritative and mostly just sounding nervous. "It concerns me, so I will not stay out of it," Grenna said. "You think I am dangerous because I am an orc, but I have been here 3 weeks and I have done nothing but work. I have not stolen, I have not attacked anyone, I have not caused trouble. Marcus took a chance on me when no one else would, and I am grateful for that. If you have evidence that I have done something wrong, present it. Otherwise, you are trespassing on his property and you should leave." The men looked at each other, clearly not having expected her to speak up. Pritchard's face flushed red. "You do not get to tell us what to do. We are trying to help Lennon here, make him see sense before he ruins himself completely." "I appreciate the concern," Marcus said, not sounding appreciative at all, "but I do not need help. I need you to leave. Now." For a moment he thought they might push it, might try to force the issue. Then Winters shook his head. "Fine. But do not come crying to us when she turns on you, and do not expect any help from the community. You made your choice." They rode off, kicking up mud from the recent rain. Marcus watched them go, his heart pounding. He had made an enemy of his neighbors, possibly permanently. It was a stupid thing to do in a frontier settlement where cooperation meant survival. "I am sorry," Grenna said quietly. "I should not have spoken, I made it worse." You made it better, Marcus said, turning to her. They needed to hear that you are not some monster from their stories. You are a person and you have a right to defend yourself. Rights are for people with power, Grenna said. I have no power here. You have me, Marcus said. That should count for something. She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read, something between surprise and something deeper. It does, she said finally. It counts for more than you know. The next few weeks were hard in a different way. The men from town made good on their threats. When Marcus went to buy supplies, he found prices had doubled. The smithy would not repair his tools. The mill would not grind his grain. He was not welcome in the tavern or the general store. People crossed the street to avoid him. It was petty and cruel, and it reminded Marcus of why he had left military service in the first place. He had seen too much of what people did to those they considered different, but he and Grenna adapted. They made do with what they had, repaired their own tools, found creative solutions to problems. Grenna was endlessly resourceful. She knew how to tan leather so they could repair their own boots. She knew which forest plants were edible and which had medicinal properties. She showed him how to set snares for rabbits and how to preserve meat for winter. Marcus brought his soldiers skills, discipline, planning, the ability to work through exhaustion and pain. Together they made it work. As autumn deepened into winter, they fell into a comfortable partnership. They talked more, sharing stories of their pasts in the evenings by the fire. Marcus told her about his years in the army, the battles and marches and long stretches of boredom broken by moments of terror. He told her about his family, a brother and sister he had not seen in years, parents who had died while he was away. He told her about the friends he had lost and the ones he had left behind. Grenna was more reluctant to share, but slowly, bit by bit, her story came out. She had grown up in one of the southern orc clans, learning farming and herding from her mother. But when she was 16, she had spoken out against a decision by the clan elders, arguing that they should negotiate with humans instead of isolating themselves. For that breach of tradition, she had been cast out, sent away with nothing but the clothes on her back. She had been wandering ever since, taking work where she could find it, never staying long in any one place. You miss it? Marcus asked. Your clan, I mean. Sometimes, Grenna admitted. I miss my mother most. She taught me everything I know about growing things, but I do not miss the rules, the way everything had to be done exactly as it was done before. I wanted to build something new and they could not understand that. I understand it, Marcus said. That is what I am trying to do here. Build something new, something that is mine, something that makes sense in a world that mostly does not. She smiled at that, a real smile that softened her features. Then we are alike, you and I, both trying to build something impossible. Winter came hard and fast. The snow started in late October and did not stop. They were trapped on the farm for days at a time, only venturing out to care for the animals and bring in firewood. The cold frames Grenna had built worked perfectly, providing them with fresh greens even in the depths of winter. The chickens slowed their laying but did not stop entirely. The goat gave birth to twins, a male and a female, which meant they would have milk through winter and breeding stock for spring. They spent the long, dark evenings working on indoor projects. Marcus repaired furniture and made new stools from the wood scraps. Grenna sewed and mended their clothes and taught him how to do it properly so his repairs would hold. They played cards with a battered deck Marcus had brought from the army. They read from the 3 books Marcus owned, taking turns reading aloud. They talked and sometimes sat in comfortable silence, listening to the wind howl outside while the fire crackled. Marcus found himself watching Grenna when she was not looking, noticing little things. The way she concentrated when she was working on something delicate, her tongue poking out slightly between her tusks. The way she hummed tunelessly when she was content. The strength in her hands and arms and the surprising gentleness she showed with the baby goats. The way the firelight played across her green skin, making it seem to glow from within. He told himself it was just loneliness, the isolation of winter. But he knew it was more than that. He was falling for her, this woman who had been a stranger just a few months ago. She was everything he had not known he wanted. Strong, capable, intelligent, kind in ways that she tried to hide. She understood him in a way no one else ever had. She never pushed him to be more than he was, never demanded explanations or apologies for his choices. She just accepted him. But he could not tell her. The gulf between them was too wide. She was an orc, he was human, and the world did not forgive that kind of boundary crossing. She was his employee, depending on him for shelter and food. Saying anything would be taking advantage, putting her in an impossible position. So he kept his feelings locked away and tried to focus on the work. He did not know that Grenna was fighting the same battle. She had learned long ago not to hope for things beyond her reach, and Marcus was definitely beyond her reach. He was kind to her, treated her as an equal, but that was just who he was. It did not mean anything more. She had seen how humans looked at orcs, the disgust and fear in their eyes. Marcus did not have that, but he was unusual. He could never actually want someone like her. So she threw herself into work and tried to ignore the way her heart jumped when he smiled. She tried not to notice how good he looked in the morning light, his hair mussed from sleep, and his eyes still soft before the day's work began. She tried not to think about what it would feel like to touch him, to be touched by him. It was pointless and painful, and she had no one to blame but herself for letting her guard down. The winter solstice came, the longest night of the year. They had been on the farm for almost 3 months, and it felt like a lifetime. Marcus had bought a chicken from a traveling merchant who was not part of the local community, and Grenna roasted it with herbs from her winter garden. They ate well that night, allowing themselves a small celebration of having survived this far. To making it through, Marcus said, raising his cup of weak beer. To impossible things, Grenna replied, clinking her cup against his. They sat by the fire afterward, fuller than they had been in weeks. The wind had died down, and through the window Marcus could see stars brilliant against the black sky. It felt peaceful in a way that he had not felt since before the war. It felt like home. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For staying, for making this work. I could not have done it without you." Grenna looked at him, and in the firelight her eyes seemed to glow. "I am the one who should thank you. You took a chance on me when no one else would. You have treated me better than anyone has in years." I was beginning to think I would drift forever, never finding a place to belong. But here, with you, I feel like I might have found that place. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, a wall he had built around his heart. He reached out without thinking and took her hand. She went very still, her eyes wide. Her hand was warm in his, calloused and strong and somehow gentle. "Grenna," he said, not sure what he was going to say, knowing only that he had to say something. "I need to tell you something. I know this is not appropriate, and I will understand if you want to leave after I say it, but I have to be honest with you. These past months, working with you, living with you, getting to know you, have been the best of my life. You are the strongest, smartest, kindest person I have ever met. And I have feelings for you. Romantic feelings. I think about you all the time. I care about you more than I probably should. I know nothing can come of it. I know the world will not allow it, but I needed you to know. I needed to be honest." For a long moment she just stared at him, her face unreadable. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was a tentative smile, afraid and hopeful at the same time. "You are an idiot," she said softly. I have been trying not to fall in love with you for weeks now, and I have failed completely. I thought I was alone in it. I thought there was no way you could see me as anything but a hired hand. I see you as everything, Marcus said, his voice rough. I see you as the person I want to wake up next to every morning. I see you as my partner, my equal, my future if you will have me. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was awkward at first, neither of them quite sure how to navigate the differences in their bodies, her tusks getting in the way. But they figured it out, adjusting angles until it worked. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted like herbs and smoke. Marcus felt like his heart was going to burst from his chest. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Grenna was grinning. "This is going to cause problems," she said. "More problems than we already have?" Marcus asked. "Much more. The humans will hate us even more. My people, if they ever find out, will consider me an even greater traitor. We will be outcasts from both our worlds. Then we will make our own world," Marcus said. "Right here on this farm, just us and the chickens and the goats and whatever life we build." "That is a big promise," Grenna said. "Then let me make it bigger," Marcus said. He slid off his chair and onto one knee, still holding her hand. "Grenna, I know we have only known each other a few months. I know this is fast and probably crazy, but I also know that I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the person I build this impossible life with?" Grenna's eyes were shining, and Marcus realized with shock that she was crying. He had never seen her cry, had not been sure orcs could cry the way humans did. But tears were running down her green cheeks, and she was nodding. "Yes," she said. "Yes, you idiot human, I will marry you. I will build this impossible life with you and be your wife and probably regret this decision 1,000 times, but I do not care. Yes." He stood and pulled her into his arms, and she held him tightly, her face buried against his shoulder. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, letting the reality of what they had promised sink in. When they finally separated, Marcus was grinning like a fool. "We should do it soon," he said. "Before winter ends, I do not want to wait." "The magistrate will not marry us," Grenna pointed out, "nor will any priest. Interspecies marriages are not legal here." "Then we will have our own ceremony," Marcus said. "We will make our own vows, and it will be just as real as any legal marriage. More real because it will be our choice, not something forced on us by the law." Grenna smiled. "You have an answer for everything, do not you?" "I try," Marcus said, and kissed her again. They spent the rest of the winter preparing for their wedding. It was a strange thing, planning a ceremony that would have no witnesses and no legal standing, but they took it seriously. Grenna sewed herself a dress from cloth Marcus had bought months ago, intending it for curtains. It was simple but beautiful, dark blue that contrasted with her green skin. Marcus polished his old military uniform until the brass buttons shone. They decided to hold the ceremony at the spring equinox, when the days and nights were equal. It felt symbolic, a balance between their two worlds. As winter began to release its grip, and the first signs of spring appeared, they worked on the farm and planned their future. They would expand the garden, buy more animals, maybe even repair the old barn enough to get a cow. They would be self-sufficient, not dependent on the town that had rejected them. The day before the equinox, something unexpected happened. Marcus was working on reinforcing the chicken coop when he heard horses approaching. His first thought was that the townspeople were back with more trouble, but when he looked up, he saw something very different. A group of 5 orcs on horseback was riding up the path, all of them dressed in what looked like ceremonial armor, leather and metal worked with intricate designs. Grenna came running from the house, her face pale. "No," she said. "No, they could not have found me." "Who are they?" Marcus asked, moving to stand beside her. My clan, Grenna said, her voice shaking. The one I was cast out from, I do not know why they are here. The orcs dismounted and the leader stepped forward. She was an older orc woman, tall and regal with gray streaking her black hair. Her green skin was darker than Grenna's, almost forest-colored, and her tusks were more prominent. She wore a cloak of fur and leather that spoke of status and wealth. She looked at Grenna with an expression Marcus could not read. Daughter, she said, and Marcus realized this must be Grenna's mother. Mother, Grenna replied, her voice carefully neutral. Why have you come? Your father is dead, the older woman said bluntly. He died 3 months ago during the first snow. As his firstborn child, you are now the chieftain's heir. You must return with us and take your place. Marcus felt the ground shift under his feet. Firstborn child, chieftain's heir. Grenna had never mentioned that her father was a chieftain, had never hinted that she was anything more than a common orc. He looked at her, seeing her in a new light. Suddenly her quiet confidence made sense, the way she carried herself with unconscious authority. I was cast out, Grenna said, her voice hard. Father sent me away for speaking against tradition. Why would I return now? Because the clan needs you, her mother said. Your brother is too young to lead, and your uncle would destroy us with his wars. You are the only one with the strength and wisdom to guide our people. I know you and your father disagreed, but he respected you, even in exile. His last words were of you. He said to find you and bring you home. Grenna shook her head. I have no home there. I made a new life. This is my home now. Her mother's eyes shifted to Marcus, really looking at him for the first time. Her expression grew hard. With a human, you would throw away your heritage, your people, for a human? I would throw away nothing, Grenna said, moving to stand beside Marcus and taking his hand. This human is my betrothed. We are to be married tomorrow. He has shown me more respect and kindness in 3 months than I received in 16 years with the clan. I will not abandon him. You cannot be serious, her mother said, her voice rising. Marriage to a human is an abomination. You would make yourself an outcast from both our people and theirs. I am already an outcast, Grenna shot back. You made sure of that when you supported Father's decision to exile me. I have built a life here and I will not give it up. One of the other orcs stepped forward, a younger male with elaborate braids. Grenna, please, the clan is in chaos. There are factions forming, threats of civil war. We need you. Your people need you. They are not my people anymore, Grenna said. They stopped being my people when they sent me away for daring to think differently. Her mother looked at her for a long moment, and Marcus saw the pain in her eyes. I argued against your exile, she said quietly. Your father and I fought about it for days. But I could not change his mind, and by the time I might have succeeded, you were already gone. I looked for you, but you had disappeared. I thought you might be dead. And then your father died, and suddenly everyone remembered that you existed, that you had rights as firstborn. Rights I did not have when I was there, Grenna said. No, her mother admitted. You did not. And I am sorry for that. But I am asking you now, not as Chieftain's wife, but as your mother, please consider returning. Even if only for a few months to stabilize the clan. Then, if you wish, you can return here. Grenna was wavering. Marcus could see it. She had never expected this, never thought she would be called back to the people who had rejected her. He squeezed her hand gently. It is your choice, he said softly. Whatever you decide, I will support you. She looked at him, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. I cannot ask you to give up the farm. You worked so hard to make it viable. The farm will still be here, Marcus said. If you need to go back and help your people, I understand. I will be here when you return. No, Grenna said and turned back to her mother. If I go, he comes with me. Marcus is my betrothed, and I will not leave him behind. He goes where I go. Her mother looked shocked. You would bring a human into our lands, into the chieftain's household. It is unthinkable." "Then you will have to think it," Grenna said. "Those are my terms. Marcus and I are a pair now. We come together or not at all." The orcs conferred among themselves in their own language, a rapid back and forth that Marcus could not follow. Finally, her mother turned back. "We will allow it," she said reluctantly. "But he cannot stay permanently. Humans are not permitted to live in the clan lands. Once the succession is settled, you must either return here with him or stay without him." "We will discuss it when the time comes," Grenna said. "For now, we will come with you, but we do our marriage ceremony first, tomorrow as planned. You can witness it if you wish, or you can wait, but it will happen before we leave." Her mother looked like she wanted to argue but finally nodded. "Very well, we will witness. Perhaps it will help the clan to see that you are not entirely lost to tradition." That night, Marcus and Grenna lay together in the house for the last time for a while, holding each other close. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Coming with me, I mean. You will be in a foreign land, surrounded by orcs who do not trust humans. It will be hard." "Not harder than living without you," Marcus said. "Besides, someone needs to make sure your people treat you with the respect you deserve. I am pretty good at that." She laughed softly and kissed him. "You are an idiot, and I love you." "I love you too," he said. "And tomorrow we make it official, in the eyes of your clan and the gods and anyone else who cares to watch." The spring equinox dawned clear and cold, the sun rising over fields that were just beginning to show hints of green. Marcus and Grenna stood in the yard where they had worked together for months, and her mother and the 4 other orcs formed a circle around them. It was not the wedding either of them had imagined, but it was theirs. Grenna spoke first, her voice strong and clear. "I, Grenna, daughter of Gorak and Sharna, take you, Marcus Lennon, as my husband. I promise to stand with you in times of plenty and times of want. I promise to respect your judgment and seek your counsel. I promise to build a life with you that honors both our peoples and neither. I promise to love you until the day I die and beyond if the gods allow." Marcus felt tears prickling his eyes as he spoke his vows. "I, Marcus Lennon, take you, Grenna, as my wife. I promise to stand with you against all who would tear us apart. I promise to honor your strength and support your dreams. I promise to build a life with you that needs no permission from others, only our commitment to each other. I promise to love you until my last breath and beyond." They had no rings, but Grenna had braided 2 circles from grass that morning, woven through with early spring flowers. They exchanged them, slipping them onto each other's fingers. Then Marcus pulled her close and kissed her, deeply and thoroughly, and did not care that her mother and the other orcs were watching. This was their moment, their promise, and he would not let anyone diminish it. When they pulled apart, Grenna was smiling through tears. "Wife," she said, testing the word. "Husband," Marcus replied, grinning. Her mother stepped forward. "By the old ways, I recognize this marriage," she said formally. "May you find the strength to weather the storms ahead, for they will be many." They left that afternoon, Marcus and Grenna riding together on one of the orc horses. Marcus had never ridden an orc warhorse before, and the experience was both terrifying and exhilarating. The animal was huge, much larger than a human riding horse, with a broad back and powerful legs. But it was also surprisingly gentle, responding to the slightest pressure from Grenna's knees. They rode south for 3 days, through forest and meadow, past human settlements that stared at them with suspicion and fear. The orcs did not stop in any of the towns, preferring to camp in the wilderness. At night, Marcus and Grenna shared a tent, and he learned that her mother had brought it specifically for them, a recognition of their marriage that meant more than words could. On the 4th day, they crossed into clan territory. Marcus saw the change immediately. The land here was wilder, less cultivated, but also more carefully managed. The forests were thick but not overgrown, cleared of deadfall and hazard. The meadows were full of grazing animals, including several species Marcus did not recognize. In the distance, he could see what looked like a large settlement, wooden buildings arranged in a careful pattern. "The clan hold," Grenna said, seeing where he was looking. 500 people live there, plus another 2,000 in the surrounding villages. It is a small clan by southern standards, but we are prosperous. We're prosperous, at least before Father died. As they rode closer, Marcus saw orcs stopping their work to stare. Children ran alongside the horses, shouting in their language. By the time they reached the central hold, a crowd had gathered. Marcus felt very small and very human surrounded by so many orcs, but he kept his back straight and his expression calm. He had learned in the army that showing fear was the worst thing you could do in a tense situation. Grenna's mother led them to a large building at the center of the hold, clearly the chieftain's hall. Inside, it was warm and smoky, lit by a central fire and oil lamps. A long table dominated the space, and gathered around it were a dozen orcs, all wearing the kind of rich clothing that suggested status. They looked up as Grenna entered, and Marcus saw recognition and shock ripple through them. An older male orc stood, his face twisted with anger. "So the exile returns," he said in accented but understandable common, "and brings a human pet with her. Is this your answer to our crisis, Sharna? A disgraced daughter and her abomination?" "Watch your tongue, Korgath," Grenna's mother said coldly. "Grenna is the rightful heir by blood and law. She has returned to claim what is hers." "She abandoned us," Korgath roared. "She turned her back on her people, her traditions. She has no right to lead." "I did not abandon you," Grenna said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm but carried an authority that made Marcus straighten his shoulders with pride. "I was cast out for speaking my mind, for suggesting that our people needed to change if we were to survive. That has not changed. If anything, Father's death proves it. We are too isolated, too rigid. We need to build alliances, to trade with the humans, to find common ground. Otherwise, we will dwindle and fade." "Common ground with those who would destroy us," Korgath spat. "Never. Your father understood that. He kept us pure, kept us strong. He kept us poor and desperate," a younger orc said from the far end of the table. Marcus recognized him as the one who had accompanied Grenna's mother. "Our herds are half what they were 10 years ago. Our young leave to seek work in human lands because we cannot support them. Grenna is right. We need change." The argument erupted into chaos, orcs shouting over each other in common and their own language. Marcus stood beside Grenna, silent but present, and noticed that several of the orcs kept glancing at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. He was a foreign element here, a living symbol of what Grenna represented. Finally, Grenna raised her voice. "Enough!" The room fell silent. "I did not ask to return. I was content with my new life, but if the clan needs me, I will serve. However, I will not serve a council that cannot have a civil discussion. We will meet again tomorrow, and I expect all of you to come prepared to talk, not shout. I am going to rest now. We have been riding for days." She turned and walked out, and Marcus followed. Behind them, the room erupted again, but Grenna did not look back. Her mother caught up with them in the corridor outside. "Well done," she said quietly. "Your father would have been proud. Korgath expected you to grovel or flee. Instead, you took control." "I learned a long time ago not to show weakness," Grenna said. "Where can Marcus and I stay?" "I prepared your old room," her mother said. "It is in the family quarters. Some will object to a human being housed there, but I am still the chieftain's widow, and my word carries weight for now." The room was larger than Marcus expected, with a real bed instead of the straw mattresses he was used to. There was a window overlooking the hold, and someone had left a tray of food and drink. As soon as the door closed behind them, Grenna collapsed onto the bed, her face in her hands. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked, sitting beside her. "I forgot how exhausting this is," she said, her voice muffled. "The politics, the posturing, the constant need to prove yourself. At the farm, we just worked. We did not have to justify our existence every moment." "We will get through this," Marcus said, rubbing her back. "You are stronger than all of them combined, and you have something they do not. You have experience outside these lands. You know the human world. That is valuable. Or it makes me corrupted in their eyes," Grenna said, sitting up. "Did you see how they looked at you? Like you were something foul they had stepped in." "I have dealt with worse," Marcus said. "Besides, they will get used to me. I can be charming when I want to be." Despite herself, Grenna laughed. "Charming, sure. That is exactly the word I would use to describe you." "Hey, I charmed you, did not I? You annoyed me into submission," Grenna said, but she was smiling. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her. "Thank you for being here. I know this is not what you signed up for." "I signed up for you," Marcus said. "Everything else is just details." The next few weeks were brutal. Grenna spent her days in council meetings, listening to the endless arguments about the clan's future. There were three main factions: the traditionalists like Korgath, who wanted to maintain isolation and the old ways; the reformers who agreed with Grenna that change was necessary; and a middle group that wanted stability above all else. Grenna had to navigate between them, trying to build consensus without alienating anyone completely. Marcus spent his time exploring the hold and trying to make himself useful. The orcs were initially suspicious of him, but he won some of them over by helping with repairs and farm work. He had skills they valued: military discipline and organization, and he approached everything with the same practical determination he had shown on his own farm. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the orcs began to accept his presence. He also spent time with Grenna's younger brother, a teenage orc named Gorak after their father. The boy was fascinated by humans and peppered Marcus with questions about human culture, military tactics, farming methods, everything. Marcus answered patiently, seeing in Gorak a potential ally. If the chieftain's son accepted him, others might follow. A month after their arrival, Grenna called a full clan assembly. Every adult orc in the hold and the surrounding villages came, over 1,000 people crammed into the great hall and spilling out into the yard. Marcus stood to the side, watching as Grenna stood before her people. She looked regal in traditional orc garments, her hair elaborately braided, a ceremonial knife at her belt. But her eyes were the same eyes he had fallen in love with on his farm, clear and determined. "My people," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "I stand before you as your chieftain's daughter, but also as someone who has lived outside our lands for 2 years. I have worked alongside humans, learned their ways, seen their strengths and weaknesses. And I have learned something important. We are not as different as we tell ourselves we are. Humans want the same things we want: security for their families, food on their tables, a future for their children. They fear us because they do not know us, and we fear them for the same reason." She paused, letting that sink in. "My father believed that isolation would keep us safe, but isolation has made us weak. Our young leave because we cannot offer them opportunity. Our herds shrink because we lack the trade goods to purchase new stock. Our knowledge stagnates because we refuse to learn from others. This cannot continue." Korgath stood. "And what do you propose? That we throw open our borders and invite the humans to flood in? They will destroy us." "I propose that we build careful alliances," Grenna said. trade agreements with nearby settlements, cultural exchanges, marriages between our peoples and theirs to create bonds of family that are harder to break than treaties. The crowd erupted, some in support, some in outrage. Korgath looked triumphant. You see, she would have us breed ourselves out of existence, become human lap dogs. I would have us survive. Grenna shouted over the noise. And I have proven it is possible. Many of you know that I married a human, that he stands here today with your acceptance or without it. Marcus is a good man, a hard worker, someone who has shown me more respect than many orcs ever did. Our marriage has harmed no one. Instead, it has shown that coexistence is possible. She gestured to Marcus, and he felt every eye in the room turn to him. His heart was pounding, but he stepped forward to stand beside Grenna. I am Marcus Lennon, he said, his voice steady. I am a farmer and former soldier. I am also Grenna's husband, and I love her more than anything in this world. I did not come here to change your ways or threaten your people. I came here because my wife needed me, and I will stand with her against anyone who tries to tear us apart. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, surprising everyone, young Gorak stood. I support my sister, he said, and I support her husband. Marcus has taught me much in the short time he has been here. He has shown respect for our ways while also sharing his knowledge. This is what Grenna speaks of, learning from each other, not destroying each other. One by one, others stood. Grenna's mother, the orc who had accompanied them on the journey. A farmer Marcus had helped with his fences, a young female orc who had been exiled like Grenna and recently returned. The reformers made themselves known, and Marcus saw that they were more numerous than he had thought. Not a majority, but a significant minority. Korgath saw it too, and his face darkened. This is treason, he said. You betray everything our ancestors built. Our ancestors built a life in a world very different from this one, Grenna said. Times change. We must change with them or die. That is not betrayal. That is survival. The debate raged for hours. In the end, Grenna won a narrow victory. The council agreed to limited trade with nearby human settlements. They agreed to send ambassadors to human towns to open dialogue. They agreed to allow Grenna to formalize alliances as she saw fit. It was not everything she wanted, but it was a start. That night, exhausted and elated, Grenna collapsed into bed beside Marcus. We did it, she said. I cannot believe we actually did it. You did it, Marcus corrected. I just stood there and looked supportive. You did more than that, Grenna said. You showed them that humans and orcs can work together, can love each other. That matters more than any speech I could give. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we prove it works, Grenna said. We return to the farm, and we build the kind of life that shows both our peoples that coexistence is possible. We trade with the clan, we trade with the human settlements, we become a bridge between the two worlds. That is a lot of pressure, Marcus said. Good thing we are good at dealing with pressure, Grenna said, and kissed him. They stayed with the clan for another month, helping to set up the first trade agreements and smoothing over conflicts. Marcus found himself acting as an informal ambassador, explaining human customs to curious orcs, and generally being living proof that humans and orcs could get along. It was strange and sometimes uncomfortable, but also deeply satisfying. He was making a difference, helping to build something bigger than himself. Grenna's mother pulled her aside one day as they were preparing to leave. I am proud of you, she said quietly. Your father would be too, even if he would never admit it. You have grown into a leader, a real leader, not just someone who gives orders. Thank you, Mother, Grenna said. That means more than you know. I am also grateful to your husband, her mother continued. He could have demanded you stay with him at your farm. Instead, he came here into hostile territory and stood beside you. That takes courage and love. You chose well. I got lucky, Grenna said. Luck had nothing to do with it, her mother said. You saw his quality and you had the courage to reach for what you wanted. That is not luck. That is wisdom. They left on a warm spring day, the fields around the hold green with new growth. Young Gorak rode with them part of the way, reluctant to see them go. "Will you come back?" he asked Grenna. "Of course," she said. "We will visit regularly, and you can come to see us too. I will teach you farming, and Marcus can teach you more about human military tactics." "I would like that," Gorak said. He turned to Marcus. "Take care of my sister. She acts tough, but she needs someone watching her back." "I know," Marcus said, "and I will, always." They rode north as summer advanced, taking their time and enjoying the journey. At one point, they stopped at a human settlement to trade, and Marcus was pleased to see that his name carried some weight. Word had spread of the human farmer who had married an orc chieftain's daughter, and people were curious. Some were hostile, but others were intrigued, asking questions about the orc lands and what life was like there. Marcus answered honestly, describing the orcs as people with their own culture and traditions, not the monsters of legend. When they finally reached their farm, it was high summer. The place looked different than when they had left, wilder and more overgrown, but fundamentally the same. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him as he dismounted. This was home. This was where he belonged. "It is going to take work to get it back in shape," Grenna said, surveying the tall grass and weeds. "Good thing we like work," Marcus said, grinning. They spent the rest of the summer and fall doing exactly that. They cleared the fields, planted late crops, repaired the fences that had fallen during their absence. The chickens had survived, gone half wild but still laying. The goats had multiplied, and they had to spend a week rounding them all up. It was hard, exhausting work, but it felt good to be building something again. Word spread that they had returned, and to Marcus's surprise, some of the hostility from the town had faded. People were curious about the orc lands, about trade opportunities. The shopkeeper who had refused to sell to Marcus before came out to the farm, personally, to apologize and ask about orc goods. It seemed that money had a way of overcoming prejudice, at least partially. The town magistrate also visited, a thin man named Aldrich Voss who had been one of their harshest critics. He stood awkwardly in their yard while Marcus and Grenna waited to hear what he wanted. "I may have been hasty in my judgment of your situation," he said stiffly. "It has come to my attention that your connection to the orc clans could be beneficial for the settlement. We have been struggling with trade routes, and the orc lands offer a shorter path to the southern markets. Are you saying you want to use my wife's connections for profit?" Marcus asked, his voice cold. "I am saying that perhaps we can find common ground," Voss said. "I am prepared to offer you a contract as official liaisons between Ashford Ridge and the orc clans. It would come with certain privileges and protections." Grenna and Marcus exchanged glances. "We will think about it," Grenna said. "But if we agree, it will be on our terms. No one speaks to my people except through me. No one takes advantage of them because they do not know human customs. And Marcus and I will be treated with the respect we deserve, not as outsiders to be used and discarded." "Agreed," Voss said, surprising them both. "Times are changing, it seems. Best to change with them." After he left, Marcus shook his head in wonder. "I never thought I would see that. Humans and orcs working together openly." "It is just the beginning," Grenna said. "There will be setbacks and conflicts, but we proved it is possible. That is what matters." Over the next year, they built on that foundation. Orc traders began visiting the farm regularly, bringing goods to trade with the human settlements. Human merchants came to discuss routes through orc lands. Grenna's brother Gorak visited for a month, learning human farming techniques and making friends with some of the local boys his age. Slowly, the walls between the two peoples began to come down. Marcus and Grenna's farm became a neutral meeting ground, a place where humans and orcs could interact without suspicion. They held a harvest festival that first autumn back, inviting people from both communities. There was tension at first, humans and orcs eyeing each other warily, but as the food and drink flowed, people began to relax. By the end of the night, Marcus saw humans and orcs laughing together, sharing stories and songs. "Look at that," Grenna said, standing beside him and watching the celebration. "We did that. We made this happen." "We did," Marcus agreed, pulling her close, "and we are just getting started." 2 years after their wedding, Grenna came to Marcus with news that changed everything. "I am pregnant," she said, her hand on her stomach. "We are going to have a child." Marcus felt his knees go weak. A child. Their child. He had not let himself think that far ahead, had been so focused on day-to-day survival that he had not considered the future in those terms. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Very sure," Grenna said, and he saw fear and joy warring in her expression. "Marcus, this is going to be hard. A half-human, half-orc child. Some people will hate them just for existing. And we will love them enough to make up for it," Marcus said fiercely. He knelt and pressed his forehead to her stomach. "We will protect them and teach them and show them that they are not a mistake or an abomination. They are the future. They are proof that our peoples can come together and create something beautiful." Grenna ran her fingers through his hair, and when he looked up, she was crying. "How did I get so lucky?" she asked. "We both got lucky," Marcus said. "We found each other when we needed each other most. Everything else is just a gift." The pregnancy was not easy. Grenna had complications that scared them both, and the nearest healer was a 3-day ride away. Marcus sent for healers from both the human settlement and the orc clan, and they came, working together to ensure Grenna's safety. It was another small victory, another proof that cooperation was possible. Their daughter was born on a cold winter morning, tiny and perfect and crying with impressive volume. She had her mother's green skin, though lighter, almost jade-colored. She had Marcus's brown eyes and Grenna's pointed ears. Her tusks were barely visible, small bumps that might grow more prominent later or might stay subtle. She was beautiful, and Marcus fell in love with her the moment he held her. "What should we name her?" Grenna asked, exhausted but glowing with happiness. "Something that honors both our peoples," Marcus said. "Something that shows she belongs to both worlds." They named her Mira, a name that worked in both human and orc languages. Mira Lenin, the first of her kind, a bridge between two worlds made flesh. People came from miles around to see her, humans and orcs both, drawn by curiosity and wonder. Some looked at her with love, others with fear or disgust. But Mira did not care. She was too busy being a baby, demanding food and attention and filling their house with noise. Marcus had never been happier. His farm was thriving, his wife was healthy, and his daughter was growing strong. He had found his place in the world, and it was better than anything he had imagined during those dark days of wandering after the war. He had built something that mattered, something that would last beyond his own life. 5 years after they first met in that hiring hall, Marcus and Grenna stood on their land and watched the sun set over fields golden with wheat. Mira played nearby, chasing the chickens and laughing. In the distance, they could see a group of travelers on the road, a mix of humans and orcs, heading toward one of the new trade posts that had sprung up along the border. "We really did it," Grenna said softly. "We changed the world." "We changed our corner of it anyway," Marcus said. "The rest is up to everyone else." "Do you ever regret it?" Grenna asked. taking a chance on an orc farmhand who turned out to be more trouble than you bargained for. Marcus laughed and pulled her close. Not for a single second. You are the best decision I ever made. You and Mira and this life we built together, I would not change any of it. Good, Grenna said and kissed him. Because I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me, Marcus Lennon. I can live with that, Marcus said. In fact, I am looking forward to it. We have a lot more changing the world to do. They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Around them, their farm hummed with life, the animals settling in for the night, the fields rustling in the breeze. In the house behind them, a fire burned warm and welcoming. This was home. This was family. This was everything they had fought for and more. Mira ran up to them, her small arms wrapping around their legs. "Inside now?" she asked in her mixed accent, part human pronunciation and part orc inflection. "Yes, inside now," Grenna said, scooping her up. "Time for dinner and then bed." "Story?" Mira asked hopefully. "Of course," Marcus said. "I will tell you about the time your mother and I fought off a bear with nothing but a rake and determination." "That did not happen," Grenna protested. "It could have happened," Marcus said. "The important thing is the lesson. Always carry a good rake." They went inside together, the door closing behind them on the gathering darkness. Outside, the world continued to change. Humans and orcs learning to live side by side, to trade and talk and sometimes even to love. It was not always easy. There were still conflicts, still prejudices that ran deep. But every mixed family, every successful trade agreement, every friendship that crossed the species divide was a victory. And it had all started with a desperate man and an exiled orc woman, meeting in a hiring hall and taking a chance on each other. They had married not knowing what the future held, only knowing that they wanted to face it together. They had built a life from nothing, created a family that should not exist according to all the rules of their world. And in doing so, they had proven that the rules were wrong. Years passed. Mira grew into a strong, clever girl who moved between human and orc communities with ease, translating not just language but culture and understanding. She became an ambassador in her own right, proof that the next generation could do better than the one before. Other mixed families followed, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The farm that Marcus and Grenna had built became a way station and meeting place, known throughout the region as neutral ground where all were welcome. Grenna's brother Gorak grew into a strong leader, eventually becoming chieftain of their clan after a peaceful transition of power. He maintained the reforms that Grenna had started, expanding trade and cultural exchange. The clan prospered as a result, and other clans began to follow their example. Grenna herself became a respected elder, sought out for advice by both humans and orcs. She traveled regularly between her farm and the clan lands, always accompanied by Marcus, who had become something of a legend himself. The human who had married an orc chieftain's daughter and helped change the world. On their 20th anniversary, they held a celebration that drew hundreds of people from across the region. Humans and orcs mingled freely, sharing food and drink and stories. Mira, now a young woman, stood and gave a toast. "To my parents," she said, her voice strong and clear, "who taught me that love is stronger than hate, that courage is choosing kindness even when it is hard, and that the best way to change the world is to start with your own corner of it. Thank you for being stubborn enough to fight for us, for this family, for the future we all get to share." Marcus looked at Grenna, and she looked back at him, and they both had tears in their eyes. They had been through so much together, hardship and rejection and near starvation. Political battles and pregnancy scares and the endless challenges of farming land that had been abandoned for good reason. but they had also had joy and love and the satisfaction of building something that mattered. "We did good," Marcus said softly. "We did," Grenna agreed. "We really did." The celebration went late into the night, music and laughter filling the air. Marcus danced with his wife under the stars, the same stars that had watched them make their vows 20 years ago. They were older now, their bodies marked by labor and time, but they were still themselves. Still the desperate soldier and the exiled orc who had taken a chance on each other, and won everything that mattered. As the party wound down and guests began to drift away, Marcus and Grenna stood together in their yard, looking at the farm they had built. The house had been expanded and improved over the years, now solid and weather-tight. The barn was sturdy, housing cows and horses and goats. The fields stretched out in all directions, productive and well-maintained. It was a far cry from the wreck he had bought with his last coins 2 decades ago. "Sometimes I think about that first day," Marcus said. "When I saw you in the hiring hall, I was so desperate, so sure that I was going to fail." "I was desperate too," Grenna admitted. "I had been drifting for so long, taking work where I could find it, never belonging anywhere. When you offered me a place here, I thought it would be the same as everywhere else. A few months of work, then moving on." "But you stayed," Marcus said. "You made me want to stay," Grenna said. "You treated me like a person, like an equal. You saw me, Marcus. The real me, not the monster that everyone else saw. How could I leave after that?" "I am glad you did not," Marcus said. "I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "You do not have to," Grenna said. "I am not going anywhere. We are in this together until the end." "Until the end," Marcus agreed and kissed her. They went inside as the last of the guests departed, closing the door on the night and the celebration. Inside, their home was warm and full of life. Mira was already asleep in her old room, exhausted from dancing. The fire was burning low in the hearth. Everything was peaceful and right. Marcus and Grenna climbed into bed, the same bed they had shared for 20 years. They lay in each other's arms, comfortable and content. Outside, the world continued to turn. Humans and orcs building a future together one day at a time. And here, on this small farm in the frontier lands, 2 people who had found each other against all odds drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that they had built something that would last long after they were gone. It had started with a simple hiring, a transaction born of desperation and need, but it had become so much more. A love story, a revolution, a family, a future. Marcus had married a simple orc farmhand, not knowing she was a chieftain's firstborn heir. But even if he had known, it would not have changed anything. He loved her for who she was, not for her title or status. He loved her strength and her stubbornness and her fierce determination to build a better world. And she loved him back, this human who had seen past the green skin and tusks to the person underneath. This man who had stood with her against his own people and hers, who had defended their right to love each other, who had been her partner in every sense of the word. They had proven that impossible things could happen, that walls could come down and bridges could be built. They had shown that love could cross any divide, that family could be created from nothing, that the future was not written in stone but shaped by the choices people made every day. And their choice, made in a drafty hiring hall on a cold autumn morning, had changed everything. Years later, after Marcus and Grenna had both passed on peacefully in their sleep on the same night, their hands clasped together even in death, their farm remained. Mira and her own family continued the work her parents had started, maintaining the farm as a meeting place and symbol of what was possible. A memorial was erected there, simple stone with words in both common and the orc language. Here lived Marcus and Grenna Lennon, who showed us that love knows no boundaries and courage can change the world. People came from across the land to visit the memorial, to see the farm where it had all begun. They walked the fields that Marcus and Grenna had planted together, saw the house they had rebuilt from ruins, stood in the yard where they had made their vows. And they remembered that once, not so long ago, humans and orcs had been enemies, separated by fear and prejudice. But two people had refused to accept that divide, had reached across it and found love and family and a future worth fighting for. The story of Marcus and Grenna became legend, told around fires and in taverns, passed down from generation to generation. Some of the details were embellished, some facts lost to time. But the core truth remained, that two people from different worlds had met and chosen each other, and that choice had rippled outward, changing everything it touched in the end. It was not the great battles or political maneuverings that mattered most. It was the small moments. A hand offered in a hiring hall, a shared meal by firelight, a kiss under the stars, a family built from love and determination. These were the things that changed the world, one heart at a time. And it all started because Marcus Lennon was desperate enough to take a chance on an orc farmhand, and Grenna was brave enough to take a chance on him back. From that simple beginning, everything else followed. A life, a love, a legacy that would endure for generations. It was, in the end, exactly what they had promised each other on their wedding day. An impossible thing made real through faith and work and stubborn determination. And it was beautiful.